Getting closer. Okay, Sabian, we're set.
All right, thank you. I'd like to go ahead and call this meeting to session and order. The second Safety and Security Ad Hoc Committee. Tonight, we're going to review open meetings, guidelines, and introduction for a paperless board system. We're going to review and discuss the current district safety and security planning assessment and implementation process, and also discuss the 2018 recommendations from the ad hoc committee on EROs, and then go ahead and discuss next meeting times and dates. So with the first order of business, I'd like to approve the minutes from our August 13th meeting 2 months ago. Can I get a second?
I'll second that.
All right, thank you.
Sorry, can I have a name, please? I didn't catch that. I can't see you all, so if you could just give me the name, that'd be great. Thank you.
That was Marcus Flowers.
Marcus Flowers, thank you.
Yep, second, and then all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Feel free to raise your hand or say aye. Yeah. All right. So next, let's discuss the Wisconsin Open Meetings Law summary, just for guidance going forward. These are the same guidelines that the Board of Education has to follow. Sherry, are you on if you wanted to give a quick overview of these?
I don't think Sherry is on, Sabian, but they were there for people's reference. If there are any questions about them, or if we need to have a discussion about them, I can invite her to the very next meeting, but that's why they were there for reference.
Okay. Well, if anyone has questions, feel free to voice them now. Otherwise, you can send an email to Mark, Gloria, or myself regarding that document.
Thank you.
Yep.
I can do a very short thing on board docs if that's okay.
Yep.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen real quick here. Hoping people can see this okay. I'm right now looking at the agenda for this meeting. This is our board docs system. This is the landing page. I just want everybody to be aware that all of your meeting agendas and materials are on our paperless system. This is something that you can access from our web page. But if I just want to point out real quick, so that if you want to see your meeting, you can click on the name of it. It takes you into this screen where you can see that people can look at the video. They can get to the video link right here, the day of the meeting. They can just click on that and it'll take them to YouTube so they can observe the meeting online. Down at the bottom, you can view the agenda. When you go into that, all the stuff in black are the major agenda items, and everything underneath that supports that item. If you see this little icon, that means there were papers that were added to this supporting documents. So it will open it up on the right hand side, and you can click on those items and it will open it up in your browser so that you can see and search on everything. And that's really the very short story about this. This is part of the links that I've been sending to you in these periodic emails that you get in between the meetings. But this is where everything will be digested and everything will be recorded and everything will stay there for the rest of eternity until things are over. So if you ever have a question about accessing anything, just let me know and I can help you with all the logistics. Thank you very much. I appreciate being able to take the time today.
Thank you so much, Barb.
Thank you.
All right, let's dig into.
Are there, Sabian, just want to, are there any questions?
Anybody has, I'll just scroll through, and if I see any hands. Nothing? Okay, I just wanted to make sure there. No
Yep,
question.
feel free to email me anytime if you do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Bren, Mark, if y'all wanted to dig into the presentation on the, and Gina on the report to the board and the current review of school safety, security, and planning and assessment. And Karen.
Yeah, we can start with Karen.
Thank you for the great introduction, Mark. I appreciate that. So welcome everyone, and thank you for taking the time for a very important topic. I'm pleased to be part of this and lead with you as a community through strengthening our systems as a safety team. So just want to start before this is to just recognize some really good messaging that came from Dr. Jenkins today. It's hard to lead into this first without recognizing those words about leading with humanity, kindness, and compassion during a time where people are experiencing trauma and anxiety and pain. And I think when I do know when I read his messaging to all of us, it's really about constructively advocating for human decency. And I think we're all in agreement to that. And so the work that lies ahead for us is to continue with that focus. So I appreciate all of you during this time. I'm going to start first with giving you a high-level overview of our journey so far as a district safety team. And then I will hand it over to Gina, who will talk a little bit more about our progress around the SRO Ad Hoc Committee report. And then Mark will give you some kind of key information about where we're going as a district safety team, leading the way into next year. And also specifically then Gina will end with specific next steps for high school. I'm ready to go. Barb, next slide.
Thank you.
You bet. So I always start all my presentations, and especially the last couple years when I took on this large task about school safety. We do have a really strong policy in place, which you will also review for any suggestions for revisions. This is 4147, and I always start my presentations with this because it is a policy that encompasses everyone in the district has a responsibility to, for the planning of school functions, establishing emergency preparedness plans, or the performance of a task. And for this is that it's to make sure that all students and each other are safe within the context of their duty. So not just one person, Karen Kepler, Mark Brown, it is everyone within this MMSD community that's responsible for that. So our journey, I'll spend a little bit more time on this specific slide. It gives you some high-level overview of where we've been. I've been blessed to be the chief of school of operations, and over time, school safety came to me and thinking through some things that to improve and strengthen our work. So I'm just going to start with 2017 to 18. That year was a pretty big year. Two big things happened at that time. One is the SRO Ad Hoc Committee and also Act 143. Both were very pivotal times that put us on this path of re-examining what we do and why. Since then, at that time, we created a district safety team, and that safety team went from one person, a coordinator of safety and security, to a big team that actually looks at coordinating and cross-referencing around what we do around school safety and how we're monitoring it for its comprehensiveness. We did a lot of planning because from the ad hoc report to Act 143, there was a lot of planning that went into effect. We applied for many grants that provided us opportunity to do some of the big work that laid ahead of us. And then we did quite a bit of review of our current data systems. For me, it's important to understand, are we making progress? How do we know things are working? What are we going to do when it doesn't? So that was a big pivotal year for us of planning and setting the stage of what lies ahead. In 2018-19, that's when the SRO contract was reviewed and approved. So that was a big year as well. For that piece, we did a lot of we had to do school safety assessments of all our buildings. That led into a district and school safety plan, pretty comprehensive plan that was submitted to the Department of Justice. We planned for infrastructure, technology, and additional training. We found where the holes were, and we had to make sure we addressed that. So I'll talk specifically about that in a little bit. And then we did a comprehensive review of our emergency procedures. They typically are reviewed every 3 years. We incorporated a standard response protocol that was a little bit more teacher and student friendly and gave it very simple terms to know what to do in the chance of an emergency. We did a lot of planning around principal, staff, and student training. We found that we lacked in that area, so there was a lot of planning about how to have a comprehensive training program. And then we also did some policy revisions around and additions, 4147, which I introduced at the beginning, and 4224 introduces the state statute, Act 143, around reporting of school safety threats. We also did additional grants, which landed Gina's position and some other kind of really great training opportunities. And then again, continually looking at our data systems and process and review. And one in particular is how we were monitoring arrests and citations as a district going into this previous school year. So going into this past school year, big heavy things we lifted. We felt good about the new emergency procedures and training. All our staff, all our students were trained in the new emergency procedures. We also did quite a bit of technology infrastructure was completed. That means welcome centers to keyless entries to a phone system that was revised, cameras. We also did comprehensive look at lockdown drills, and those are school safety threats. And we coordinated that with the principal and law enforcement and schools to really make sure that we're taking extra care with those required drills. We coordinated a high school AP safety team, and that was every other week we met to look at data, to review our practices, to surface to make sure we had a consistent approach across our high schools. And then we continued with data collection. And then the last, we had a commitment to make sure that there was a timely arrest and citation report. Previously, it was somewhat a year behind on when the public was receiving that. So this year, it was important for us to get that to the public. Next slide. Over the course of 3 years, and people have heard me say this before, staff and principals, that we went from being inconsistent as a school district across our schools, fragmented, siloed, to more like our goal is to be consistent, coordinated, and integrated, not just within MMSD, but also agencies that we work with around school safety. One point that I wanna make sure this committee and others continue to remember is that school safety, 80% of it, when you do school assessment around school safety, it's really about the human action, and what we do matters. Not only how we respond, but the preventative measures, the love, the development of relationships with one another is, you know, a lot of the work around when we talk about school safety and school climate. The other pieces are technology and infrastructure. Sometimes it's easier to go to those when we talk about school safety, but the human actions are actually where a lot of our time and attention needs to go into. I do a little like protecting the house. I am a mother, so I kind of use that term. It's just I protect, being a principal, a previous principal, I protect my school like I would my house, and putting in the care and love to our school, our students, our families, and making sure that everyone feels safe, welcomed and a sense of belonging. And with that is also looking at school safety, making sure that it's comprehensive, that includes preventative measures, being prepared, how we respond, and how we recover in all different facets of making a school safe and welcoming. One thing I want to point out through our time the last 3 years, we're really good at responding and recovering. But we were missing, the holes that we were missing were the preventative measures and how we were being prepared. And so as I spoke to before, it was we put a lot of effort into trainings, to preventative social emotional supports in our schools, the trainings with our principals, make sure school climate and our emergency procedures, a lot of things more on the top end on the preventative and being prepared. This is what I spoke to before. We used to have Mr. Luis Udici, who raised me as a school principal and taught me a lot of things I didn't know, from a safety coordinator to a team. And this team should bring different areas of expertise as a district, not only to prepare and plan for, but also to respond for incidents that may occur in our community or also in our schools. And so this team has superstars on it, very well skilled knowledge, and are pulled together based on the incident that might be occurring or things that we're planning to prevent stuff from happening. And just related to the recent deep concerns in our community that have occurred in Kenosha and also Minnesota, this team does come together to make sure that we are providing supports and care to our families and the community. So we're already planning and responding as such. So just a small example of what this team has done. We also, since the last couple of years, it was very important for this team to make sure that we are partnering with our community agencies and learning from them as well, and making sure that they are guiding us through any kind of upgrades or strengthening of our plans and responses and procedures. So as you can see, this is not a comprehensive list, but it's also some key people that we bring to the table as we are providing supports and planning for our school and community. And as you can see, public health has become a major partner, especially through this pandemic, and helping us with reopening schools and giving us guidance. So that's just a little example of how we work together. I know Charles Tubbs, he's been also taking on some great training opportunities for Karen Kepler and teaching me a lot about what's on the outside world, outside of a school or district. So I appreciate all his training on that, as well as others. And again, some highlights that you can think about, so some high-level overviews of what this district has accomplished to strengthen our school safety plans is: one, school assessments up and running, and we're continually looking at how we are assessing what we're doing and why, and what we can do better. School safety plans are full in effect, and it feels like we have a very good comprehensive plan for that. And then our safety grants, continue to manage those large funding sources to ensure that we're fulfilling those commitments are key, and we're extremely appreciative of those grants that were provided to us. Locks, cameras, phones, we couldn't do it without that. Those are infrastructure changes that were necessary for our buildings. Securely is an online monitoring program, especially comes right into play right now, especially when a lot of students are online. It helps us monitor safe application and use of computers, and how we're informing parents when we are alerted when that is needs some support and redirection. And we also have the standard response protocol. If you haven't seen it, we'll make sure that we send it out to you to ensure that you know that that is what we are currently using as a district for emergency procedures. We have our staff and student training, again, making sure people know what to do when something does happen. And always our data systems process and reviewing time is key, no matter where we are in our planning. So that's important to us. Next slide, please. Now I'm going to hand it over to Gina. She's going to talk about the pathway where we took since the two most important inputs that we received, where it led us to a place where we are now. Gina?
Thanks, Karen. So yeah, we talked a lot about safety and where we have come. Karen showed you all that timeline, which was our journey from 2017 until now. But as Karen said, there are two big things that happened that really were the catalysts in moving us much further forward around safety and security, especially doing both the protective piece as well as the responsive piece, as well as making sure that we're being preventative and really looking to those opportunities for early intervention. So in 2017, the state of Wisconsin established the Wisconsin Act 143, which created the Department of the Department of Justice created the Office of School Safety. So before that, the state of Wisconsin did not have an Office of School Safety. They do now. It also established many safety grants, like Karen had mentioned. It required all schools to update their school safety plans, which is what, again, Karen was discussing in that last slide with all the different things that we have done as a district. And then it required the mandated reporting of all threats of school violence. And so that is a little bit more what I will dig into here. And that is because, as Karen mentioned, with my position, the coordinator of cross systems and critical response, my job became training and supporting school-based teams to be able to assess for threat and also be able to do mental health crisis management, early intervention, and then planning for support. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But that specific grant was the Stop School Violence and Mental Health Training Grant. The more about these grants were also in the memo that you all received. So there's definitely more information there and specific about what we've done so far, and then what we're hoping to do as we move forward. Next slide. There we go. And then also, as you all know, the famous ERO Ad Hoc Committee, which actually started in 2016, but lasted so long and took a lot of time and effort that the official report didn't come out until October of 2018. There were 16 recommendations that were made by this ad hoc committee, and we have actually been able to make progress towards initiating all of them. And I would say that most notably is the work that we have done in collaboration with MPD to create our own comprehensive data tracking system, so that we are tracking our own data, so that if there is police activity in our schools, that we're able to make sure that we're monitoring that, really utilizing that as a way to work with our principals and assistant principals, and then have that connection with MPD to cross-reference that data. But that was a big moment for us, was making sure that we were having our own oversight over the data, and that was a new thing for us moving into this past year. Also, it's just important to note that there's 4 recommendations that all related to this very ad hoc committee. So that was also super helpful. So moving in to the next couple of slides here, we decided to put up all of the recommendations. I did condense them. They are longer. I really tried to synthesize what each recommendation was, and then what type of progress was made. We color coded them. Gray is the request or the recommendation for creation of an advisory committee, such as this one. The yellow is stuff that we have put into place and that we're continuing to work on and revise and refine. Next slide. And then the green are things that we were able to put into place and successfully implement. I would definitely draw your attention to the recommendation for referrals to restorative justice to be considered as a first alternative for students. And I know that some people here in the room are definitely responsible for creating this this collaboration where as of January 1st, all students or all youth, not just students, right? Not just MMSD students, age 12 to 16 who might have been eligible for a municipal citation are instead directly referred to restorative justice community practices, which are county coordinated. So not through MMSD, but if they are receiving a municipal citation or would have received a municipal citation, it's a direct referral. So, I think that's definitely something that came out of this ad hoc committee. And then that next slide. Oh, I changed it to yellow, but it's red here. So the only one in red that we have there is amending policy 4400. And that's something that we haven't tackled yet, but we're hopeful that with this ad hoc committee that we'll be reviewing policy and beginning to look at 4400 and make the appropriate changes as needed in collaboration with our legal counsel and safety and security team and you all. So that's why that's in red, but we were back and forth thinking maybe we should turn it to yellow because it's definitely been initiated. We've definitely started looking at it. And then I'll turn it over to Mark for the next couple of slides.
Thanks, Gina. So the question is, where are we now? First, I want to give Karen a lot of credit. I'm fairly new to the district. I've been here about a year. And I have to admit that I was very impressed with the work that this team has done on a short amount of time. Since Act 143 went into place, school districts were kind of scrambling to get things together. And the work that they've done has been very impressive from a logistical standpoint and actually getting people trained and getting everybody online. So kudos to Karen and Gina and Bren and the rest of the team for what they've done. But my part is about where are we now? In the past year, 2019, 2020, the MMSD district safety team, we've implemented a comprehensive scope of district and school safety and security planning, assessment, implementation, and training. And there's a memo that you all received that has more details if you want to take a look at that. We do hold bi-weekly meetings with our district safety team, high school principals and assistant principals, build and strengthen the consistent practice and procedures. And I really want to emphasize the consistent practice and procedures. We are very consistent in how we do things in the school district and our procedures that we use. We've reviewed and strengthened the role of school security assistant and assistant principals to implement and lead district and school safety procedures. It's actually an ongoing process with getting folks trained and prepared. Our goal is to be more proactive than reactive to incidents that happen in the schools. We built the capacity of high school critical response team to assess for safety, violence risk, and threats to others or to self and others. And with that, I really want to point out the Securely application. That's a key application for all students. It lets us know when a student is in crisis. And we are able to get on top of it, get a hold of parents and start making arrangements so the kids start getting help, the help that they need, which is really, really good. Improve annual arrest and citation report outlining arrest, citations, and alternatives in MMSD. Next slide. So as we look at planning ahead for the next school year and beyond, the team is committed obviously to fostering and promoting equitable outcomes for our school communities. We navigate a plan for the 2021 school year. We are committed to keeping our schools safe, secure, and welcoming by prioritizing the following. We provide training to our staff with a specific focus on safety and security personnel, student services teams, and school administrators to ensure they have the skills to support skills and support needed to perform the essential safety related duties of their job. We review current research, collaborating with stakeholders, and analyzing our data to strengthen the work of our safety personnel and school systems as they provide support to our schools and school community, which is also equally important by looking at what other districts do, collaborating with our external partners and our internal partners, and really taking a hard look at the research that we've started to collect. We identify and secure and ensure key safety teams and structures are in place in all the schools, and identifies team members and planning that includes family, student, and community voice. We review policies and procedures and make suggested changes to the Board of Education to ensure our guidance has the greatest impact in keeping our school communities safe and welcoming for all students, staff, and families. And that's one of the things that we'll be doing as a group, is kind of reviewing our policy and making recommendations. We continue to collaborate with MMSD and with our students, families, and community partners in achieving the goals of the Behavior Education Plan, the BEP, including promoting a culture of safety and belonging for all people in MMSD and reducing disproportionality and exclusionary discipline. And next, I will give it to Bren.
You're actually going to give it back to me, Bryn, unless Bryn.
I do have a question. We got a lot more presentation?
Nope, this is the very last slide.
Okay.
So I will just summarize it up by sharing that, Mark was mentioning where we are now, where we're going. Two things that we have been focusing on is the school-based critical response teams, and really thinking about these teams as being preventative and early intervention. The goals of a school-based critical response team is preventing violence and diverting youth away from the criminal justice system, assessing the functions of the student behavior and evaluating that underlying need using established protocols like the threat assessment, suicide risk assessment, non-suicidal self-injury assessment, really wanting to get into the root of what's going on for the student instead of reacting and penalizing the student for their behavior. And then lastly would be developing next steps that are culturally responsive and really supporting a plan for action or a plan for support, not just in the immediate response, but in the future as well. And that really connects to our district continuing to really make sure that we're engaging in practices that are anti-racist, and that we're really focusing on how we can develop plans for students long-term. And then the continued partnership. We know that there's a lot of conversation right now, and we're really working hard on creating a comprehensive guidance document for if we do, for whatever reason, need to involve law enforcement in our school buildings, how are we doing that, either from an emergency response standpoint, or if we're needing to utilize a type of consult standpoint. And again, really wanting to take that time to make this guidance very specific and tailored to if and when we need to involve law enforcement. How are we doing that in a way that still keeps our students and our buildings at the center and our focus of our work. And that is the last slide. The last slide says thank you. So that's what we got.
Yeah, thank you so much, Karen and Mark and Gina and Bren, for that presentation. I want to open it up for discussion and any first reactions or questions that people may have. I'll do my best to keep track of the queue.
This is Vanessa. I was just gonna respond. To be honest, I think I'm having a hard time tracking a little bit without the acknowledgement of all that has happened this week. So to be talking about safety, protection, those words are actually triggering for me right now. And I don't feel like we've acknowledged that at all. I mean, I feel like we kind of touched it a little bit, but that was pretty major what's happened in our state. And to be talking about safety and security for our kids and talking about anti-racism and all these things and not taking time even in this group to acknowledge that and sit with it for a minute, I think is sort of a misstep. So I just want to kind of start there if we can to kind of reset a bit.
Sure. I mean, I think Vanessa, thank you for bringing that up. I agree. I think you're so spot on. We should have acknowledged that and started off our meeting with that. And I think it is a good opportunity to sort of open up that conversation in how knowing what we have learned today, right? And knowing what has happened here locally and across the country, you know, how do we move forward? And I think it is a really good opportunity for us just to throw that out there, right? I think a lot of what we learned today was very technical and information that the team has been working on. But as you know, Karen started off with us, right, is we really have to lead through compassion and humanity. And that's the part that is really lacking right now in our communities. And so Vanessa, I think I'm open to sort of what your thoughts are specifically, or anybody else on this team, to really bring that to the space at this moment.
I can jump in and just acknowledge what Vanessa said. And to be honest with you, I wish I would have done that to begin the meeting. I have been dealing with that PTSD all week as well, from witnessing and just bearing witness to the Kenosha officer with pretty much attempted murder on Jacob Blake's life. And I think in many ways, that's why we're here today, because, you know, as a district, I think personally, I think that right now the institution of policing is not very compatible with what we're trying to build for our students in schools. And so, yeah.
Anybody else? I mean, I think, you know, this is a hard time for our Black community, our entire community. And I think it is, as I said, an opportunity for us to talk about it as it relates to safety in our schools.
So I was just going to offer that, you know, we just started Welcome Back at our school, and a big push has been from the district, this anti-racist and social emotional learning lens. And right, if we acknowledge that this educational system was steeped in white supremacy, we have to acknowledge all of the other places and all of the other systems it is also steeped in. And so I don't think we don't have a full conversation if we don't talk about that, if we don't get at the root of what exists. And so I think that's important. I think that gets overlooked because we feel like it's something we have to do day to day. But if we really are talking about what it really means for our students to feel safe inside of school, we were coming at it from an educational standpoint, but in terms of the system of law enforcement as well, we need to understand that it's growing from the same root, and it's a deep root. And we need to acknowledge that, and we need to make sure that we're always pulling away from that.
Thank you, Anthony.
I suppose, you know, I always run my mouth, so I suppose I have to say something here. First of all, thanks a lot for the presentation. I appreciated the information and apologize for interrupting. But there's two things that are on my mind. One is there a springboard question that leads to why we're here tonight? That's one. And then number two, I totally agree with Vanessa's question. You know, right now it's like the oxygen is out of the room based upon what has happened. And, you know, there just seems to be that kind of hanging over everything we think and say right now as it relates to policing. But getting back to the original question, is there a question that we're looking at that will engage the 27 participants in what we're trying to accomplish tonight? That is my question.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, I think it is right now, it is reimagining what safety looks like and is. And I think with Anthony, you know, his point is really recognizing the deep rooted issues within education and how do we best support and reimagine what safety is, right? And understanding the historical harm that the law enforcement institution has had on our Black children. And so this team is really moving us in the direction of giving us in the school district guidance on what that looks like in supporting our children, particularly our Black and brown children. And you know, without the having to rely on law enforcement to solve all of our societal issues, which we have moved to as a society for years. And looking at our policies and also within our budget and you know, look at different ways of supporting the good work and supporting, you know, and identify the opportunities to fill the gaps in how we support our children within our budget. So it is our responsibility as a committee and Savion and I as a school board members to really look at the policies and procedures and the budget surrounding this work. And, you know, I recognize that given, you know, what has happened, that we can clearly take this opportunity in this meeting to divert and really just focus, center us on that. You know, and but so I think we can do that, right? I think we have to do that. I think Vanessa and Anthony, I think in, you know, really bringing us back and centering us to what's happening. This is the time to do it so that we can really be clear moving forward.
And I just want to jump in there. You know, the way we frame it is also crucial because, you know, the loss of Anissa Scott, you know, alongside the shooting of Jacob Blake, all are instances of violence for which we're trying to ensure that safety looks a certain kind of way. You know, it is my hope in this conversation that we are very clear about who we're trying to protect and who we're trying to protect who from whom. I'm on as many times I've been in these high schools, and especially living in this space, you know, it is not, I don't think we're always as honest as we would like to be, and it creates more tension in these spaces. When we talk about initially having these conversations about removing police from schools, being adamant about the fact that, you know, I think a lot of times safety in these spaces, and we can put together all nice presentations and grids, and these are our goals, and these are the things we're going to do specific. But the reality is, in these schools, we're trying to ensure white families that they are protected from Black kids. And if we're going to be trying to change that paradigm and shift it to where all children are safe, we got to start using a different language and lens that really looks at the trauma that's underneath these children. And while we can point our fingers at law enforcement,
I don't always want to point my finger at law enforcement. I want to point at the complicit individuals who support these strategies and these perspectives that allow for these traumatized babies to continue to move through these systems and not get the support they have seen. Some of the most indebted trauma that these kids have experienced that has nothing to do with safety didn't come from law enforcement. It came from their teachers, their social workers, those administrators in buildings who turned their eyes away while they were being put on shortened school days and not being given full access to their education, and then being told that they don't deserve to be in buildings. So those micro cuts that these kids have experienced are what is drawing me to this conversation. And to honor the legacy of people who have died and who've had to live with that space, I'm choosing to be in this moment. So to say, like, listen, we can't just sit around and allow us to pontificate that what we have done before is good. It's not good, because the strategies that have perpetuated the disparities in our community have continued to exist longer than some of us care to remember. So it's just important that we use this moment to have very clear ideas. Like Noble said, what is the jump off question? What do you want us to engage in? Because before we get to a place where enough is enough and we just kind of sign out and just go protect our own children and start homeschooling or something, we need to have clear strategies of how we can use all of our collective intellect to bring together strategy. Like, I want to know basic stuff like how many people's in the school, what what does the security team look like right now, how many people are being given power. A lot of those details I just couldn't find in none of the work that you sent me, so I really have no idea what is being offered in terms of current security outside the 4 police officers that were inside the building. So there has to be some other security that's operating in these spaces. Who are they? How are they trained? How are they hired? And what are some of the responsibilities that they have also for ensuring safety in these spaces?
And I'd like to jump in real quick, and I don't want to cut off Judge Mitchell's point. I want to give you guys a chance to respond to his question about who make up the security teams in the building. But as an educator and somebody who's in a high school, who's doing that day-to-day work, there are a couple of things that, as I think about the work of this group and the question that Chief Ray brought up, wants us to kind of contemplate, I think we have to think about what is our vision of what safety looks like. And when we talk about safety, we're talking about our most vulnerable kids, our Black kids, our Native kids, our English language learners, our trans and gender nonconforming kids. And we have to formulate a vision of what that is in the long term so that we can come up with what we're going to do in the short term, right? Because right now we don't have kids showing up on the 8th. In normal circumstances, we would have kids coming in our door and we needed to have answers about what we're going to do in the short term and how we're going to respond. But I think this gap that we have gives us a chance and an opportunity to really dig in and think about long term when we're talking about safety. And as Judge Mitchell said, we're not talking about dealing with the Black kids so that the white families don't go to Wanakee, or they don't go to Middleton, or they don't go to Verona, right? We're talking about centering on our most vulnerable kids, and how do we create an environment where police interaction is not necessary for them at school, right? And what does that environment look like? What does the student to teacher ratio look like? What does the curriculum look like in a building like that? How is the day structured, right? We don't have to stay married to this 7 hours a day, 7 classes, rotate from class to class, 50-minute classes, teachers come in and out. We talk about wanting relationships. I can't manage relationships as a human being with 150 people, real relationships, but we ask our teachers to have meaningful relationships with 5 classes of 30 kids in a day, right? How are we creating that environment where safety can happen for all of our kids? And we're not creating this assembly line style of education that's what education is about. It's about creating workers, the system that we have. And we got to move away from that, because we see, given the things that we're experiencing in our community, societally, it ain't working. So the question I would say, as we think about that question, what is our long-term vision of what safety and security looks like as we center on our Black students, our Indigenous students, our English language learners, and our students who are non-gender conforming, and our trans students? That's the question we need to step in and start talking about what's our long-term vision of that. And then we can come up with a short-term plan that aligns with that vision.
Yeah, thank you, Marcus, for that. I think that that's correct. I mean, I think it is up to this committee to establish those. What does it look like, right? Reimagining what it is. What is safety, and what does it look like now, moving forward, given everything that's happened, and our taking our SROs out, and filling that gap. Lori, did you have something?
I was just going to say one thing for clarification. So the piece about the recommendations associated with all youth receiving municipals having the opportunity to go to restorative justice, that isn't actually happening. What was referred to in the report was for 12 to 16-year-olds, which is a citywide initiative, but that leaves out 17 and 18-year-olds that are receiving tickets in the schools. So those kids were supposed to be going to have different options to not have law enforcement contact, but that wasn't enforced, and kids were still getting tickets, and they had the opportunity and structures in place through community partnerships to be able to do that, but it just isn't happening. I guess I'm curious for this body and for the school district in terms of where is the space for creativity and authentic community partnership to support transition and moving forward. And student voice and parent and community involvement. In some of the recommendations, it's talking about community involvement on these committees and the safety committees, but I'm not seeing that represented in the people that are listed as those teams.
Lori, I have a follow-up too, along with one of the recommendations.
Is somebody talking?
Yes, can you hear me?
Wayne, is that you? Okay.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yep.
I have a follow-up with one of the recommendations that talks about EROs should not enforce school policies or school rules and should not be utilized or instructed by the school staff to enforce school policies or school rules. So my question is, in a situation where you have either the SRO or a beat officer who responds to a school for a disturbance, and it's determined that the student is going to be suspended for 1, 2, or 3 days. And on top of that, we have students that are also getting issued citations. So when we talked about the data, Gina, you made reference to the data earlier. Do we have the data that breaks down when those officers are issuing those citations on their own or when they're being requested to do so by a school staff? Because I think that a large part of that data is not initiated by the officer. A large part of those citations are not issued by the officers. They're being issued at the request of the school staff. And I think that's an important distinction to make, because when we talk about Black students receiving, I think it was 78 or 87% of the citations, a large portion of those citations were issued at the request of a school staff, not at the initiation of the officer. And I think that's an important distinction to make when it comes to making sure that there's clarity around that issue of this issuance of the citations.
Okay, thanks, Wayne. So I just want to make sure staff are documenting the questions. I just really want to, we're moving into questions. And which is good. I think that that's where we wanted to go. But I just want to make sure that we've had, is there anything else that we want to bring into the space in regards to what's happening and what here locally, as Vanessa mentioned, so that we can be thoughtful in our discussion moving forward as far as these questions go? If not, we'll go directly to the questions because they're coming.
I wanted to contribute. I wanted to just honor and expand on what has already been said, that especially like today I gave a workshop where I did not mince any words regarding what teachers are doing pedagogically in their classroom that denies young people the psychological and social ways of being and coming into the classroom as exactly who they are. And the fact is that as a witness and as other students witness what teachers do in the classroom, that's a very powerful role that students are seeing and experiencing themselves. So my question and my contribution comes directly from pedagogically. What are teachers doing to, or are teachers able to support the life or death of their kids in their classroom through their curriculum? But in other words, what are the factors in classrooms that lead young people to lose who they are psychologically and socially? And the fact that it's really grounded in a space where students are spending so many hours every single day, just speaks volumes to me, especially as a classroom teacher. So what I think about in terms of safety and culture and climate of a building is I think about some of the, quite frankly, violent curriculum that is being handed down to our students on a day-to-day basis, starting from kindergarten through the time they walk out of our doors.
Thank you.
Can I add something really quick? First, I want to pick up on something that Wayne mentioned, and it is a phenomenon that is not just here in Madison, but is nationwide, and it is this phenomenon called profiling by proxy. And it's so you have not just a police officer with their biases, either implicit or explicit, but the teacher's biases and or staff. And police officers feel more encumbered to do and react to what the teacher is saying or the staff is saying. And as opposed to, and I go back to the police officer, as opposed to doing a good sound report. The second thing I want to mention, want to ask, and this is more of a question than anything else, when we tracked the number of arrests and disproportionality as it related to African-American students in Madison, and it was African-American males, special education, that were disproportionately arrested and contacted by police. My question, and I just throw this out, you may not have that, is that still going on right now? That was the disproportionality that was happening before when the state was tracking this information. It was African-American male students that were special education students, and I apologize if I'm not using the correct language right now, but that was the disproportionate contact, confinement, etc. And so I'm just kind of curious if that is still the disproportionate contact and confinement taking place in the schools right now.
I know that I'm not necessarily supposed to speak unless a direct question is asked to us on the support part, but Chief Ray, I can answer that it's actually now disproportionate to African-American females.
Wow.
That has been that shift. And you can see the links over the last 4 or 5 years that there have been multiple groups, support groups that have been established for our male students of color, but it has been few and far between for our females. There's an individual in this group that has been working with Dear Diary, and we're looking at expanding and attempting to figure out more ways to do that with some mentoring programs for our females.
Oh, wow. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so go ahead, Sabian.
Anyone Anyone else wanted to jump in and offer concepts and thoughts that we should all consider in this work going forward?
But I also want to make sure Nova's point is clearly stated. Just because the rise in young black girls has increased doesn't mean that black boys in that situation has decreased. I will say that probably about 90% of the young African-American men that we see in the court system all hit the criteria that you talked about. All of them have IEPs. They've been put in shortened school days for at least 2 to 3 years. They've had multiple instances of trauma, and they have not all received that treatment, and they have disproportionately high contacts with law enforcement throughout their early years, starting from like 8th grade all the way up to about 10th, when they finally just buy out after about 10th grade.
Yeah, Chief, that is still, Judge Mitchell, thank you for jumping in. And I think if we have staff here to answer that specifically, or if we haven't answered that correctly, but that is still a really big issue. The half-day programming, very much so an issue. So we have a list of questions that each of you have, some of you have asked. Let's just bring in staff to answer them. That way, and then we can continue the question and answer. So I think one of the questions that came up with, how many safety security officers do we have currently?
Mark, do you want to take that one?
Currently, we have 30. 30 school security assistants. And they are assigned to the high schools and middle schools. Elementary schools do not have them. Each school is, the middle schools have 1 per school. And the high schools have generally about 6 per school, or 5 to 6 per school. They work different shifts. They serve a variety of purposes. I think not just looking at it as a traditional security standpoint, but they also work closely with the security assistant principal, the principal, the behavioral support teams. So they are pretty crucial in our schools because they know our kids. They know our kids and tend to know our families a lot more. So that's the makeup of that group.
Mm-hmm.
And then, go ahead, Savian. Did you document the questions so we can go through them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can I just add something about, I just think that it's important to note that most of our security assistants are staff of color, and also that they're pulled in so many different directions. They're used in a lot of different ways, and we don't often take the time to find better systems so that our security assistants can do the job that if you look at their job description, they're often used in different ways. I can think of so many times that they're used to go get kids from class, or to run this, or to go watch a class. And so when we think about what our security assistants are doing and what their job description is, they don't always add up. And I think it's really important that we think about that and what their role truly is in supporting the safety and security of our schools, and then also the powerful relationships that they have with a lot of our kids, and being some of the main staff of color in our high school. I just wanted to highlight that piece as well.
Can we get a copy of those job descriptions?
Yeah, absolutely, Judge Mitchell. And thank you, Patrice. I just want to add a couple of things to get a picture, and maybe this comes up where we can send you some additional information. We reviewed the SSA roles and responsibilities this year, and also looked at adding, which we did and the board approved, to establish 1 lead SSA in each high school so that we can have the power back to the SSA unit. And also making sure that we're working with the safety and security assistant principal to make sure we had consistency in the application and the use of the SSA. So they're not running to get a lunch or getting a student from class, that they actually have really clear roles and are uplifted to see the power of their role and how they fit into different teams. The next thing is to think about it, Chief Ray, is like, we also are spending a lot of time this past year, but going into this year, establishing key teams. So we have a behavior mobile response team, which is a day-to-day kind of redirecting, and that consists of assistant principals, deans, maybe behavior education assistants, people that know students that respond to a behavior in a school. We have critical response team who is in an emergency, they come together, and it would include SSAs or a nurse, people depending upon the situation where it's a heightened emergency. And then there's also work that Gina Agulia is doing, is more of a critical response team, where it is more of a response and recovery, and putting in some supports to students that we know already that need some preventative measures. There is a school safety team, which we want all schools going into this year. It's a proactive look at what is going on in our schools, looking at the data, addressing the good questions you guys are raising about what are we doing with the known student groups that are underserved and underserved but over responded to in inadequate ways. And I would say, yes, that we still, even though we have reduced citations in our school, we have much more to do in our schools that address our Black males that are routinely surfaced as having some issue that could have been prevented before it escalated to a response that included law enforcement. So we have much work to do, and that is where going into this year is critical, that we're working with these teams at the school level. So there is a sense of ownership and priority to make sure we're hitting the right question that you asked. I think that that's critical. I think about, thank goodness, I'm sorry. Oh, I want to say thank goodness that this is.
Let me know when I can talk, please.
Yeah, you bet. I'm also, it's important that to note that this is, what's cool is that it's recorded. I'd like to have our administrators and staff hear the questions that you are raising and your comments. I think that's important. It's hearing that voice of this group. So want to leave it with that. And Gloria, you can raise the other question or other responses that we need to give.
Gloria, this is Coach. Can I talk for a minute, please?
Just a second, Coach. We are going through questions right now. You're on the docket. We'll get to you.
Okay.
Go ahead, Sabian.
I believe Lori had a question about the progress of restorative justice implementation and wanting to distinguish if that's coming from, an internal capacity from the district or partnering with the city program. Is that right, Lori?
Well, I'm just curious about, the district is partnered with Restorative Justice Community Partners, so I'm just curious about why it's hitting law enforcement when kids could be coming to school-based restorative justice, why it's continuing to hit law enforcement and go through the formal system with the 12 to 16 year olds in the city, because it's much more formal and it has more it's more deeply connected when there is an alternative system where it doesn't have to touch like that. And also curious about why juniors and seniors are still getting municipal tickets in the high schools when they should all be going to school-based restorative justice. So just this, and you don't have to answer it right now, but just the point of there are creative community-based systems and partnerships that we have in place that we're not fully utilizing to their potential, and we are still relying on law enforcement, although it's just outside of the school now.
Thank you. Okay, I want to let Coach Assad say or ask a question, and Ed Sadlowski has his hand raised. And then if there are any other questions, please let me know. Otherwise, we're going to transition to Mark to address some of the questions that were emailed to us.
This is Coach Assad. Thank you for the opportunity. I wanted to know if I have permission to address two questions. I didn't get the opportunity earlier to sort of address some of the questions around what's called security. Let me know if I'm able to. If not, I can move on as well. I'm sorry, I didn't hear anybody.
If you wanted to provide a response, that's okay.
Okay, thank you so much. First of all, we in security are asking that we no longer be called security. We feel like that's a punitive term that doesn't encompass what we do at all. We would like to be called outreach and engagement because that's what we do in the building. We reach out and we engage, we support, we operate in a multiplicity of roles and functions. So for someone to just define us as security, that is not at all what we do. We encourage, support, convene, inspire, because that's what we see in us when we see these youth. And as someone said, it's primarily made up of the highest amount of people of color in the building that are the lowest paid. And at some point, people are going to start to recognize and respect the impact we have on our schools. Because in many cases, a lot of times, I feel like when the brown and black voices that are in what we previously called security, they should be in these meeting rooms a lot more also, because 8 or 9 teams aren't necessary to support children in the building. It just has to be the right people who actually want to do it. I think it's too easy for us to assemble 8, 9 teams to do something, but all the while it dilutes the effectiveness, the efficiency of what we're actually doing. If you sincerely want to work with children, it doesn't take that many people to. It just has to take sincerity. And I just don't want the voices of the black men and the brown women and brown men who have held these buildings down, and the engaged white people. I don't want our voices lost in this, because we should be in every room and at every table when we're talking. I'm not going to take 7 minutes to say what I could take in 7 seconds, but the people who stabilize these schools should be, our opinion should be asked a lot more. We don't want to be called security. We want to be called outreach and engagement.
Great point. Thank you, Coach. And just in my work and getting to know some of the staff that work in the schools, some folks whom I graduated with, y'all do so much more than quote unquote safety and security, like giving kids rides to and from schools, meals, forming like really strong relationships with students that help them get through the school day. So I just want to acknowledge that work that y'all do. It's so valuable. Ed, did you want to add something?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I just wanted to respectfully request that the MTI Board of Directors statement on anti-racism and the work that's going on, both within the union and the district, be entered into the record. I think it provides an insight. It was drafted and developed pretty much, for the most part, by high school leaders who are actively engaged in the union. And for what it's worth, I was here involved with MTI when the first EROs were brought into the system, and also the school security assistants, or better known as outreach and engagement officers. I like that title. Were brought into the union as well. MTI was in May 16th, we put out a statement which really helped precipitate, I think, this dialogue in the community. And I want to thank, on behalf of the union, everyone for participating. I continue to learn and reflect as an individual, and somebody who's been very committed to democracy and anti-racism, anti-violence, school safety for a lifetime. But there's a very well-crafted document And in large part, it called for all the things we're talking about. So it's very affirming. And the union leadership really felt that we couldn't just replace or take away resources that have been well established. It was a radical change in position for the union. And I was asked to explain why are you doing this as an organization? And I really called the document a manifesto towards supporting students and feeling safe. And so it's very self-explanatory, but I would respectfully ask the co-chairs that document be provided to everybody engaged in this important work as well. You'll see that the union is calling for all the training, quite a bit of additional resources around social, emotional health, and all of that kind of resources, as we know, takes a commitment by an organization to make them a priority. And unfortunately, in the state, we're really confronting some large issues financially as a district as a result of horrific decisions that have been made at the state and federal level right now. And we can get to that together as well as we move forward. But I just wanted to again, draw attention to a very comprehensive document, and I would be remiss in my responsibility to everyone if I didn't draw attention to it and ask that it be shared. So thank you.
Thank you. If you can send that document, that's certainly something that we can add in our communication to the larger ad hoc group. Before we move on to written questions sent to Mark, I just want to quickly summarize, I think, some of the big themes, concepts, and questions. Number one, absolutely holding space for the events that are happening in the world in which we operate and work in, particularly this week. What happened with the attempted murder on Jacob Blake and ongoing unrest happening in Kenosha and Madison. Big conceptual is how do we flip the paradigm and language and lens from safety and security to something that more we really want to reflect as a community as we engage in anti-racism. How do we be proactive and ultimately prevent the micro cuts to students that happen every day in our system and in the community? What kind of staff or just adults in the building to students ratios do we have in our buildings, and what kind of training, trauma-informed care, de-escalation, conflict resolution, and otherwise are folks receiving? How do we be proactive on a, I think a curriculum grounded in whiteness, and how do we improve that to improve student engagement so our students are engaged and hopefully inspired by their learning? And then discussing profile by proxy, teacher and staff biases, and really digging into why are African-American girls and boys, particularly with special education intersections, or at least allegedly so disproportionate in our data. And with that, please let me know if I've missed anything. Otherwise, Mark, would you like to please address some of the questions that were raised to us via email?
Yeah, I'm going to make a suggestion. Listening to the questions that came in tonight, I think as the group begins to know each other a little bit better and starts to feel a little bit more comfortable, we hold off on the answering the 3 questions that we have and combine all the questions that we've gotten tonight. That way we can sit down as a group administrative support team and kind of look at everything and answer everything at one time. I mean, I don't really want to have questions hanging out there and then, have questions hanging out there and people not getting their answers. So I think that if it's okay with you, and I think it would be great to just take the questions that we have now, give people an opportunity through this week to ask other additional questions if they want, and then we can pick all the questions as a collective unit and get to all of them. Because the questions that were asked were great questions. I mean, they're really good questions.
Mark, can you share those questions to everyone so everyone knows what they were?
Yeah, I think what I'll do is I'll send them out to everybody so they know what the questions are. And then people can either add to those questions or add their own questions to them. I think that makes more sense going through them now, because like I said, everybody has questions, and there's questions that, I want to make sure everybody gets their questions answered so we all understand. Kind of makes sense.
I totally understand that you want to wait to answer the questions, but I want the entire group to know what the questions are. Do you have it in front of you? Otherwise I can bring it up. There were only like 3 questions that were
Yeah,
sent.
if you have them, can you bring them up
Um,
in front of you?
yeah. Go ahead, Sabian, move on and see if there's any other
Okay.
comments.
Are there any other points of Chief Ray?
Yeah, I do have a question. This is not the first time that we have, decided or talked about pulling officers out of the school. At one point in time in the mid 2000s, I was going to pull the EROs out of the school. And the reason why I did not was because of the teachers union. They were very strong and adamant about me not doing that. My question on that is, did something happen along the way where that demand or the need for officers being there on the part of the teachers? Did the teachers have a different view of how safety and security would be? I'm really curious as to what was the shift, because I was all ready to pull officers out, and it was the teachers union that pushed back. And so I'm just really curious as to what happened.
Ed, can you answer that question? Or somebody? I mean, it makes sense, Ed, if you recall those times rather than anybody else.
Well, and I'm remembering the incident in 2005 when a student was tased running from an officer. And I think that precipitated, because I was a part of those conversations. And thank you, Chief, for facilitating that situation. I think that there's just a change in an understanding and reflection about how kids are experiencing, a uniformed officer in the school, and everyone's on this panel is really helping me to understand in a better way why the change in the dynamic, and in an important way. Back in the early 2000s, I think we were still reeling from, and again, there's still a lot of mass shootings going on in public schools, which no one's talking about anymore. I think Parkland being the last really big one, but a lot of the issues that we are seeing today relative to lack of staffing have existed in a systemic way. The social workers, the psychologists, the special education resources have always been underfunded and short. The things that kids really need around emotional and mental health support and feeling safe. And again, I think the district's come a long way, and so has the union. I left in 2007, and it's a radically different MTI upon my return in the best sense. And I'm giving a big compliment to everyone. So it's a different time. And I think this document that I was referencing really sheds a lot of light on what teachers are thinking and feeling about the issue. And that's why I really ask that it be shared, and I'll make it my business to do so. And thank you, Chief, for your service.
No, thank you.
Gloria, Sabian, can I respond to that, please?
Yes, please.
I just don't want us to make the assumption that it's somehow normal for Black and brown kids to pick up calculus books as they go by Glocks. And let's not make the assumption that that is normal. A lot of school systems don't have any type of officers walk by. I think it basically just reaffirms white supremacy when we assume that it's just because it's been 30 and 40 years that somehow Black and brown kids thrive with police officers in the school. It's a condition of the apathy in our world that has resulted in there even need to be police officers in the first place. And it is a tool and it is a construct of racism, because as much as we talk about children feeling protected when they see police officers and teachers feeling protected, Black and brown kids don't feel protected because we're the ones catching bullets in the back, knees on the neck, and you know, we can't breathe and we can't look around. And I just want to be frank, sir, as we talk about the union all the time, let's ask the real question about the power in the union. How diverse is that? The decision makers in the union, how Black and brown and gay are they? That'll tell you how our union is really evolving, because when we really talk to the schools and the teachers, you know, there's a large disproportionality in teachers of color in the building. So if our union was strong enough and awake enough, it wouldn't be such a dearth of Black and brown teachers, because that's what we really need in these schools, much more than these tutorials on this and that. We just need some Black and brown people in the building talking to the children the way they're used to. All this happens and stems from disproportionate incarceration of Black and brown people, which has turned this into a money grab. And we create all these terms we use for how we're going to serve our children. And we use all these Caucasian-based terms, you know, social emotional. No, it's just like having a mom and dad around to talk to you and chill you out. If we weren't disproportionately in prison, our school system would be a lot different, because there'd be a lot more Black and brown people working in these buildings and in these schools and in these institutions of higher learning around our children every day. And they would see a steady diet of people that look like them in buildings and draw their inspiration from that. So that's what the union, respectfully so, sir, that's what we ought to be working on, is making sure that we have more Black and brown and Black queer nation in our school. We need more people that reflect what the students see instead of the assumption. And I need to make one more point. An everyday microaggression, what does it become after a while? It becomes a major assault. So you may cut me a little bit every day. At some point, my wound won't heal and my wound's going to get bigger. So our culture and our students shouldn't be dealing with microaggressions every day. That tells us we haven't done our job. All these things to minimize and to debilitate our students' ability to learn and grow, we have to eliminate them. And it's only going to come with a conscious union and an accepting MTI, and this assumption that somehow that teachers don't feel protected. If a teacher doesn't feel protected in the school, what do you think a student feels? And we talk about teachers, and they're very valuable, and they do some of the greatest work in the community, but teachers worry about being protected. Let's worry about a society where our kids need to be supported and protected as well, because we don't do enough of that. We do enough talking about it, but we don't do enough real work about it. I'm sorry if I took too long.
Thank you, Coach. Thank you. Thank you so much. I mean, I think that's real. And so thank you for sharing. Martha?
I wanted to speak in on that too, because when we have our disabled, all our special education kids and everything that they're dealing with, and then we pull mental health into there as well, and we have a lot of behavioral plans that have been in place. How well are we responding to those? And I often wonder too, how much are we putting on the general education student, on the gen ed teachers in the classroom? I've been to multiple tables, not just my daughter's own IEP needs, but there's a lot of stuff that gets put on the general ed teacher's plate that can come from a special education student. So I question how well we're supporting the classroom for our special ed students, and also supporting the classroom as a whole, so our general education teachers can continue to do their job and be successful.
Savian, you got.
What's that? Yeah, another major theme that seems to be appearing is that, and I think this also is related to the decision or the change on grading made earlier this week. But how can we make schools fit a student's current life situation to facilitate and inspire their learning, no matter what designation they have or identity they may have as well, and making these classroom environments where a student, no matter a so-called ability, feels like they can excel and learn in that classroom.
Great, thanks, Savion. Do you want me to go ahead and go through these questions quick that were sent so everybody knows?
Yeah.
All right, so the questions that came in via email, thanks again for sending them in. We will we'll have the district go through them and answer them and send them to everybody, but I just wanted to quickly go through some of these. One question is actually asking for current data on the correlation between a student with an IEP and any involvement with an ERO. More specifically, an IEP that includes a behavior education plan. If I need to ask this via an open, do I need to ask this via an open records request? Can they do that? It spoke of a plan to remove SROs over time. Is there a document detailing how to implement it? I saw several labels of special education response and behavior education plan responder. I saw several labels of a special education response and behavior education plan responder. I'm not quite sure what that question is. I think we're going to have to get clarification on that.
That's actually something that I asked. I was wondering, what are they? Because I have asked several people who do not know exactly what that terminology or what is that designation? Who is that person in the school?
Gotcha. Okay.
Like, do they have multiple roles? In other words, or are they just there for that reason? But they were included on the original documents.
Great. Thank you. How many are at each high school and what training do they have? Referring to that. Regarding the point made on page 6 of the document that was sent out, school leadership and climate have a larger impact on school safety than the presence of ERO and PD. What will we do to reform teachers who police their students in the classroom? Examples of how secondary teachers do this. There's a list, right? Why are you late? Do you have a pass? Isolating students from friends so they aren't distracted, but causing harm by creating an unwelcoming environment. And things, some of this stuff came out today in our conversation. The committee is convening for a few months. Given the charge of this committee and given these unprecedented times, is this an adequate amount of time to meet, do research and make recommendations to the board? Who made the final decision around the timeline? How did they come to this conclusion, and can this be altered? That's a great question. I think, I do want to just quickly touch on that. That was pretty much all the questions that we received. But I think, times have changed since we first developed this ad hoc committee. And, I think that initially, right, as we start making our way through this work, it will most likely change because our climate, our environment is changing so quickly. And so it is going to be up to this committee to determine that and have a voice in whether we continue to meet, how long we need to meet. This was just a recommendation and something needed to get approved by the board, but ultimately the recommendation will come from this committee on what the needs are. And so if we need more time, what kind of time it looks like, what is it that we need to do to readjust? And so that's going to be very flexible as we move forward.
Yeah, I'd say the short answer is yes, we can definitely adjust the timeline and extend it.
Great,
thank you.
Bianca, did you want to add something?
No, that was it. The question was answered. Thank you.
Thank you. Real quick, I know there are a number of people who have not spoke. Stephanie or Anthony or Corvan, Johnny Milton. No, I'm missing people here. Eugenia Highland. Feel free to add something. Just jump in.
Well, I would say about West, what we're trying to do is implement more of student voice where they can feel welcomed in the classroom, because that's part when they are disengaged in their learning. That's when the safety occurs happen, when they don't feel welcome in the classroom. They don't see themselves in the curriculum. So it's just like, why am I here? Then I'm going to disengage. Then I'm going to stay in the hallway where things tend to happen. And that's where the safety concerns start. So with me, safety starts with, am I welcome in my building? Am I welcome in my class? And then we can go from there. So that's what we're trying to start up at West for this year, giving students a voice where they can feel seen and feel heard every single day they walk in that building, feel that love and support, especially during this time right now. So we'll see how it goes, but we're trying to implement that to proactive instead of reactive all the time, which makes, since I'm on a behavior response team, we're always reacting to things. So we want to get on top of it so we can help our kids before they reach that point of needing police service or whatever. So.
Yeah, I noticed Vanessa clapped, and I'm going to go ahead and clap on that one too. Thank you, Ron.
Yeah, thank you, Savion. It's Eugenia. And
I'm sorry.
It's okay. Thank you. Maybe following up from what was said right now, which I really appreciate. I think that restorative justice, and also like affirming what Lori was saying, besides like what was in the presentation is not accurate. And also the work that we do as part of the work that we do in the county and the city of restorative justice and supporting youth that are impacted by police contact. And it's not it's not happening because of the ad hoc committee. And it kind of like feel like it was kind of like one outcome of the ad hoc committee, and that's not the case. That's the work that we have been doing for 5 years in the community. Like the fact that it's direct referral is not because of the ad hoc committee. So just like one thing to clarify, because it was kind of like highlighted a little bit within the document, and it's not work that MMSD has done, just to like clarify that. And also affirm what Lori was saying, that it's not happening for, first of all, it has always been a struggle to actually get, like that direct referral. And I just like want to affirm like the work that Time Bank has been doing, because they do the work in the high schools and the fight to actually, like receive those referrals, and not sometimes we receive them in the municipal side of it, like in the outside, and it shouldn't be happening. So it has been dysfunctional already, and it's still not functioning right. It's disproportionate targeting Black youth. It's like a lot. I think that also when we think about restorative justice, usually the understanding is more reactionary than proactive. And I would like to invite everybody also, and it has been also misutilized as another way of punishment. And in some spaces, I'm not saying that everywhere, but in some spaces that has made our work really difficult. The partnership that we have with the district is really very small. And sometimes it feels like we have like this great partnership, it's good. I'm not saying that it's not good, it's good. But like in like YWCA, for example, we're only in 2 middle schools. That's it. 2 middle schools and a half. That's it. Like a whole district. And that's like how far our partnership with MMSD is. So there's a lot that we also need to build up, as partners. And also to bring restorative justice, I think that there is a lot of misunderstanding. We have like a lot of us who like really support restorative justice, and there are people that do not believe in restorative justice and doesn't feel that it works. So I think that we need to like actually have a better conversation of what really is and how it should be implemented. it is in the document that MTI is recommended, you know, like we started to listening all around. I think that we need to be very careful on how restorative justice, its philosophy and practices are gonna be implemented in several spaces, so it doesn't become like another form of punishment. So it doesn't become co-opted by what we, you know, sometimes like we think that it works, which is punishment, which it doesn't. So, so it's very important for that. I appreciate the committee having our voices here in the space, so that we can also, you know, like advocate and push for that. So I really appreciate that. And I think that's it. Yeah, one last thing. Okay, sorry. So I think the presentation, thank you for the presentation at the beginning and everything, but I think it's too pretty. Like, it just feels like we are like doing great and everything. And it's, we know that it's not true. And the thing is that even if like the piece on restorative justice is not accurate, it's not like that, the impression that it gave about restorative justice and the other committee, like that's not accurate. It's not true. So I'm really, you know, wondering a lot. I have many questions around those implementations for the 2020. I have many questions around that, because I know that the piece that is really talking about the work that we do is not accurate. So that's kind of like the other comment that I have. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Eugenia. I think I think that has come up a few times in this meeting. I think it is worth having a conversation and a presentation around restorative justice, the partnerships that we have with the school district, are really giving us the data around the use of restorative justice, where, how, who's in charge, you know, what's happening. I think, why is it, I think the question earlier came up, that why is it that we say that our students are going through restorative justice, but you know, some are going through the police process. And so I think that question needs to be answered too. So just a note to the district staff that we can talk about a presentation on that next time.
Yeah.
Hey, I just want to apologize, since it obviously has come up several times. I did not, when I was presenting that information, I was just sharing one of the many different ways that we have been attempting to work on these recommendations that were made. And before most of our time, before, you know, a lot of us were on this team to try to push some of this work forward. And so I apologize for making that connection between the ad hoc recommendations and the January 1st shift with MPD, not with MMSD and not with the partners, but the MPD shift from issuing citations to not issuing citations for 12 to 16-year-olds and directly referring them to their partners, again, not us, but MPD's partners in restorative justice and in lieu of that citation. So again, it was an attempt for me to explain something that's happened in our community that our kids are involved in, but not directly a partnership that we have with YWCA or Time Bank. So I just wanted to clarify that, because I didn't mean for there to be confusion around that.
Okay, thank you, Gina. I think, you know, it's a worth a conversation to have.
Yeah, and with Eugenia and Lori, I think it would be worthwhile, just as a committee, you know, if you recommend any presentations or readings that we should do to really ground ourselves in the concepts of restorative justice and what that means, I think could be really worth our time. And from a staff side, not just at the high school level, so the secondary, but also the middle school level, you know, what things we have to do to reach scale where this programming is not just in 2 middle schools, would be worth our discussion moving forward. Because we did talk about the little million cuts that our students go through every day. And I think that is a key piece to being more proactive so we don't have these snowballing things that happen.
So we are at 6:48. So I just want to be respectful of everyone's time. I think we went through a lot tonight. I think we're supposed to end at 7. So I think that Savion, if you want to go through the next, do we have any other items on the agenda?
Yes. Oh, sorry. So the next item on our agenda is confirming next meeting dates and times. We have 3 proposed dates, September 10th, September 24th, and October 8th as the next times we will meet. I want to open that up to discussion if we should amend some of those dates.
We put, so a couple of days after the last meeting, we recommended 6 students to be able to participate. And I know that everybody really wants student voice on this body. So I would recommend that we give some time to make sure that we get that as we move forward. So if we need to have it a little bit later so we can identify some students to be involved, I would appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that district staff are reaching out to the parents and students themselves to confirm, and hopefully we can get them approved by the board at our next meeting this coming Monday so that we could move forward.
So yeah, Lori, they'll be on Monday. It's on our agenda, and the names of the students that were referred to us will be approved on Monday. And so we'll be, I think, and ready for September 10th.
Great, thank you.
So I think the next immediate date is September 10th. Are there any objections with that date?
Mr. Castro, if I could just for a second, yeah, so the next 3 dates that you have are real solid. I think we're really great with that. We could get a little bit further into the meetings and then talk about additional dates a little bit down the road, but that'll take us at least, 2 to 4 to 6 weeks to get there.
Okay.
So you don't need to recommend new dates right this minute if you don't want to.
Okay. So I think items in our agenda for next meeting would probably be where we're at with restorative justice programming and grounding ourselves in that philosophy. Lori?
So we're talking about for the next meeting on September 10th?
Yeah.
I won't be, I'm supposed to be off. I'm trying to take some time off for the next couple of weeks, so I won't be able to prepare a presentation before the next meeting. I'm not sure how Vanessa and AU are feeling.
Okay.
I would ask to push it back a little bit if you're asking us to prepare a presentation.
Well, we also have restorative justice, like our leads within our MMSD too, that could maybe, I know you all have some connection to them.
Yeah, I think it would be important that you hear from us though, because I think there's a difference there between kind of the district leads with restorative justice and the work that we do from the community perspective. So I would agree that if Lori can't be there, we should probably push it back.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
And I just want to also highlight like one of the most important things of why community partners are important is because we bring accountability to the system, to MMSD system. When we presented together, Time Bank, MMSD, and us, recommending to the ad hoc committee, recommending for school for EROs to be removed from the schools, there was a lot of backlash towards the MMSD internal restorative justice team, which is like what was like a couple of people at that time. So it allows for us to be more transparent because we are not MMSD staff.
Okay. Real quick, Mike. Sorry.
Hey, this is 2 pages long, so I apologize about this, but we do have one student that is here. Is it Asiana? I'm as a La Follette student here. Asiana, are you there?
Yeah.
I apologize. I did not see that you were on the second page until Mr. LaRosa pointed it out. But she is a student that from a Follett that has agreed to, she works during the day. So I had talked to her mom and then we were able to finally connect. But she is here with us. Thank you for coming, Adriana.
You're welcome.
What up?
Hey.
So say, are you okay? So I think we are good to go on the dates, and we will wait on the restorative justice focus presentation for maybe the following meeting on September 24th. And so I think the next agenda, I think our next meeting, we could incorporate some of the many concerns, questions that came up either via email and then also during this conversation. And again, we'll hear from the district on those answers. Savion and I will be just updating the board on Monday night on our progress and how many times we've met and what we've done and how we're moving forward. So anything else? Savion?
Martha?
I just had a quick note that if there's any difference in restorative justice practices being an MMSD versus one of the charter schools, if there was any differences, if we could be made aware of them. Thank you.
I think that's something we can look into. Chief Ray, are we good?
So I think just before I motion to adjourn, I think I wanted to just quickly, end with how Vanessa, brought us into this conversation. I think it's been really hard for many in our community, particularly our young Black youth, through what's happened in Kenosha, the violence in our community. And I have been thinking over and over in my mind that, we continue to fail our Black and brown kids throughout every system in this city, in this county, in this state, in this country. I think at the beginning, I was very concerned about our move towards this decision, but more so even now, I am more confident that this is the place that we need to be at this very moment in time. And I think that Savion and I will do our best in bringing up and sort of setting that space as Vanessa put us in at the beginning of really recognizing the pain that is occurring in our community so that we can bring this in our discussion. I think that is so important to be able to lead us in making these sound decisions that impact our most vulnerable communities. And so we will bring that into our space so that we are making the decisions that are reflective and what our students deserve. So I just wanted to say that. And Savion, I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, Gloria. And yeah, we should always ground ourselves in that to start off with. So I've taken that to heart. And so with that, can I please get a motion to adjourn?
So
Savion.
Yeah. Sorry, Coach.
Can I say something for 5 seconds?
Sure.
This, what's happening in Kenosha, in Georgia, in Ohio, everywhere else, it's just not devastating Black children. Let's not forget, it's devastating Black people in general, brown people in general. It's created in us a debilitative fear of how we're going to talk to our children, how we have to script every moment they're out of the house. We shouldn't have to do that. I don't hear white fathers telling their sons and daughters how to act around this militarized system that they're engaged in. we have to bring much more than vocal power to what this world we have to change now, because we must change this world for our children. We have to. It's vital. Talking's not going to do it. Even if we have to get to a point where we boycott, there's no way we can serve and love and honor La Follette students if we don't honor, serve, and love and recognize the fidelity of Black adults. It's nonsense for me to hear somebody say they want to support our Black and brown children when they can't talk to a Black or brown adult. So let's just keep that in mind about the real work we have to do. Thank you for letting me take this time.
Thank you, Coach.
I so moved on the adjourn.
Okay. All right. Second, all those in favor?
Who did the second, Savion, so Barb knows?
Thank you. I got it.
Got it? Okay.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What a
Good
beautiful
evening.
group.
Take care, everybody.
Yep.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.